There is a bird in your yard right now that knows your face, not your car, not your jacket, not the general silhouette of a human being crossing its territory. Your face, specifically, mapped, filed, and retrievable for years. I know how that sounds. I used to hear sentences like that and figure whoever was saying them was the kind of person who reads meaning into clouds. I'm a tech worker in Northern Virginia. I have a small yard, 2 tube feeders, a sweet cage, and an oak tree with a woodpecker hole that's been there longer than I have. I'm not naturally inclined toward projecting things onto wildlife. But 3 years ago, 4 crows landed on my back fence on a November morning at 6:43. I checked the time because I thought it was interesting. And what happened between those crows and me over the following 3 winters has changed, permanently, and in a way I didn't expect, how I understand the word known. If you have crows in your area and you've ever wondered why they seem to choose certain people and write others off completely, why they show up for some yards and not yours, why certain neighbors seem to have an effortless relationship with them, and yours feels like it isn't going anywhere, this video is going to give you an explanation that is more specific than you probably expect. Welcome to the channel. Subscribe before you leave. Stay until number 6. I've been trying to find the right words for number 6 for 2 winners now. I'm not sure I have them right yet, but I'm going to try. Number 1, the file they've already started on you. Here is what the research on crow face recognition actually shows. Work coming out of the University of Washington, published in Animal Cognition in 2008, and it is not what most people assume. Crows do not generalize. They don't have a folder labeled humans with a general threat level attached to it. They have individual files, specific faces, specific histories. By the time a crow has observed you moving through its territory 3 or 4 times, it has already built a working profile, how you walk, whether your movements are sudden or predictable, whether you've ever reached toward one of them, whether your presence has correlated with food, and whether your presence has ever correlated with something that made them leave in a hurry. The study that established this was not subtle. Researchers wore masks, a specific dangerous-looking mask, a specific neutral mask, while trapping crows on a university campus. Afterward, the dangerous face was mobbed by crows for 5+ years, not just by the birds that had been trapped, by crows who had learned it secondhand from other crows who had learned it from other crows. 65% of the campus crow population eventually mobbed a face that only a handful of them had ever personally encountered. This is not general wariness around humans. This isn't just the background alertness of wild animals in a dangerous world. This is not instinct responding to a broad category. This is a specific individual making a specific decision about a specific face, and distributing that decision through a social network that extends well past your property line. The American crow's brain contains a specific structure. Scientists call it the nidopallium caudolaterale, and it functions exactly the way your prefrontal cortex functions, taking up roughly 1/4 of its total brain volume. Their brain-to-body ratio is comparable to that of great apes. What that means practically is that the crow on your fence this morning is not reacting to you. It is reasoning about you. The Hatfields, that's what I call the crow family that has worked my yard for 3 winters, 3 to 4 birds depending on the season. And as I'm recording this in early November, they're already back at the oak. First showed up at 6:43 on a Tuesday morning 3 years ago. I put peanuts out on the fence and went inside. They watched from the oak. That pattern repeated every morning for 2 weeks before anything changed. At the time, I thought they were just being cautious. What I understand now is that they were building the file. Number 2, what they're actually reading, because it isn't the food. Here's what most people don't know when they first try to build a relationship with crows. The food is the introduction. It is not the relationship. Once a crow family has decided your yard is worth investigating, what they are reading from that point forward is your behavior. Specifically, how consistent it is. The northern cardinal at your feeder doesn't much care whether you're having a rough week or a good one. The American robin working your lawn is not building a model of your daily patterns. The mourning dove that shows up at dusk is not comparing this version of you to last Tuesday's. The house sparrow at the window has no interest in that question whatsoever. Crows are different in a way that is not a matter of degree. It is a difference in kind. The documentation from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, specifically their work on crow social behavior, describes something researchers call anticipatory behavior toward specific humans. It means crows adjusting their position, their vocalizations, and their alertness level before you've done anything, based purely on which human is approaching. They don't wait to see what you'll do. They already have a prediction. They run that prediction against incoming data every time you step out your back door. What they are reading. Whether your movements are slow or abrupt. Whether you make eye contact with them or look away. Direct eye contact reads as a challenge in most bird species, and crows track this specifically and individually. Whether you were there yesterday and the day before. Whether the version of you that shows up today is the same version they cataloged last month. The food matters as an initial signal. Peanuts in the shell are where I'd start, whole and unsalted. But what the crow is tracking past the first week or two is something different entirely. You are the variable they're most interested in, not the feeder. I used to think I could skip a few days and it wouldn't much matter. I was wrong about that, and I'll get into exactly how wrong in the next section. Number 3. The blacklist, and how people end up on one without knowing. Here's where it gets significantly worse, or better, depending on what you've already done. The crow blacklist is real, it spreads socially, and most people who are on one have no idea. They just notice, vaguely, that crows seem to avoid their yard, show up briefly and leave, watch from the power line but never come close. They assume this is how crows are. It is not how crows are. It is how crows are toward them. The threat generalization research, the same University of Washington work behind the mask studies, shows that if a crow family flags you as a threat, naive birds who have never personally encountered you can still learn to treat you as one. The radius of that social network is not your yard, it's your block. Depending on how established the family's territory is, it can reach across most of a neighborhood. Here is the version of this that I have personal experience with. And I want to be honest about it because I think a lot of people do the same thing and never connect what they did to what happens next. About 2.5 years ago, I'd been putting peanuts out for the Hatfields every morning for roughly 3 weeks. Consistently. Same time, same spot on the back fence. Then I had a genuinely difficult stretch at work, and I forgot about it for a day, then 2 days. And then 2 weeks had gone by without me thinking about the crows once. When I started again, the Hatfields did not come back that morning. It took 4 days of peanuts sitting untouched on the fence before the largest bird, the one that usually scouts first, showed up and watched from the oak for 40 minutes before landing. The research on flight initiation distance, or FID, documents this clearly. Trusted humans are granted approach distances of 10 to 12 feet by wild crows who know them well. Strangers, or people who have created uncertainty, get 30 plus. In 2 weeks of absence, I had moved from 10 feet back out to 30, and I had to earn it again. It is not the consistency of the food that matters. It is not even how often you show up. It's whether the version of you that appears today is the same version they cataloged last week. Reliable, predictable, not a source of uncertainty. Uncertainty for a crow reads like a category of threat. The recovery timeline for a broken pattern, based on documented cases, is 1 to 2 years of steady, non-threatening presence. That's not meant to discourage you. It's meant to tell you that what you do in your yard this month is already being logged, and the log runs forward. Number 4. The gift economy, when assessment tips into something else. There's something worth sitting with in this next part, because it is the point where the relationship, if you've built one carefully, becomes harder to explain with purely functional language. Crows give gifts, not metaphorically, not in the loose sense we sometimes mean when we say an animal has given us something. Crows have been documented bringing specific objects, small buttons, pieces of smooth glass, a white stone, a fragment of broken jewelry, to specific humans who have been consistently kind to them over time, not to humans in general. To the particular person whose face is in the file, whose behavior has crossed some threshold in the crow's ongoing assessment. The most carefully documented case involved a family in Seattle, a girl who had been feeding crows in her neighborhood since she was 4 years old. By the time she was 8, the crows had brought her over 60 objects, a lost camera lens cap, a pearl-colored button, a small piece of metal that turned out to be part of a broken heart-shaped locket. The University of Washington team that documented this were careful with their language. They did not use the word gratitude. What they said was that the behavior indicated an individualized reciprocal exchange pattern, meaning a specific back and forth with a specific human, tied directly to how consistently that person fed them and stopping when the feeding stopped. Some objects appeared to have been retrieved from elsewhere and brought specifically to that yard, which implies selection, which implies intent, which is where most ornithologists start choosing their words very carefully. I have not received gifts from the Hatfields. I want to be straightforward about that. I'm not building toward a claim I haven't earned. What I've gotten over 3 winters is something harder to name and maybe more honest as a measure of where the relationship actually sits. The chickadees in my yard still flush when I come outside too fast. The blue jays go quiet when I open the back door at the wrong angle. The Hatfields at this point shift position. They don't leave. They make room for me. I don't know exactly what to call that. The research coming out of the Max Planck Institute on episodic-like memory tells me those crows have a record of 3 years of mornings with me in them. Whatever is in that record is apparently compatible with staying. Number 5. What mobbing means, and the mistake almost everyone makes when it happens. Now let's talk about the part that gets uncomfortable, because I see this come up in backyard birding conversations constantly, and the advice people give is almost always wrong. If a crow mobs you, if you walk outside and 1 or 2 crows are making noise at you from the trees, following you across the yard, angling lower, the instinct is to wave them off. Back up. Get inside. I understand that instinct completely. It is exactly the wrong thing to do. When you react defensively to a mobbing crow, you confirm the assessment. You just told them they were right about you. The FID resets, the social transmission begins. Crows mob Cooper's hawks using the same behavioral system they use for a flagged human. Alarm, escalation, social spread. What feels like one bad morning in your yard can become a neighborhood-wide report before the day is done. The correct response, and this is backed by corvid behavior research, is to remain still. Avoid direct eye contact and wait for the mobbing to stop on its own. Then leave slowly. Return the next day as a neutral, unreactive version of yourself. Let them reopen the file with new data. I did this wrong the first time. One of the Hatfields dove at me when I got too close to where I think they'd nested in the oak. This was spring about 2 years ago, and I panicked and waved it off. That bird did not update immediately. It took 6 weeks of consistent, neutral presence before things returned to where they had been. You don't need to feel bad about this if it's happened to you. I felt terrible about it for longer than was useful to anyone, including the crow. What helps is not the guilt. What helps is showing up tomorrow the same way as yesterday and letting them revise what they have on you. Number 6. The February morning. I've saved this one for last because it doesn't fit cleanly in the same category as the rest, and I want to try to say it right. It was a February morning, 7 degrees, still dark at 6:15. I had gone outside to clear ice off the heated bird bath near the back fence. The chickadees use it most mornings in hard weather, and the Hatfields have landed on it occasionally during serious freezes when everything else is locked up solid. I wasn't thinking about the crows. I was thinking about ice and the call I had in 40 minutes and whether the thermostat was set high enough. I heard one land behind me. I didn't turn around. Three winters has given me a reasonable sense of where they land and how much space they keep for themselves, and I've learned that turning suddenly is the wrong move. I just kept working on the ice, slowly, not looking. When I finally turned, slowly, not directly at it, one of the Hatfields was on the fence post 8 feet from where I was standing, not on the oak, not across the yard at its usual assessment distance, 8 feet. And before I go further, I want to be honest about what I had done to earn this, or whatever word applies here. 3 winters of peanuts on the fence, 3 winters of moving through my own yard like someone who understood they were being watched. 3 winters of staying still when they landed and not making the whole arrangement about me. The bird was not looking at the bird bath. It was not looking at the fence. It was looking at me. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Long enough that I got cold. Long enough that I stopped thinking about the call and the thermostat and everything that had to happen before 9 a.m. The crow eventually shifted its weight, glanced once toward the oak, and flew. No gift, no vocalization, just a crow on a fence post in February darkness, 8 feet, from a person it had apparently decided was worth 8 feet. The research from the University of Cambridge describes what corvids do as episodic-like memory, recall of specific past events, a specific who and where and when, not just accumulated patterns. That crow has a record of every morning I've walked out that back door for 3 years. Every peanut, every gap, every time I moved too fast or stood still too long. That bird on the fence post had more specific information about my daily habits than most of the people I work with. I'm not going to tell you that morning meant something beyond what the science says it means. I'm not going to tell you it didn't. I don't have a clean answer, and I've stopped expecting to find one. What I can tell you is this: there is a version of your yard where the crow on the power line is just a crow, and there is a version where it is a specific bird that has made a specific decision about you, built up over months of mornings you weren't paying attention to, and where that decision is the only reason it's still there. You don't have to do anything dramatic to change which version you're in. You just have to show up, the same way, enough times, and let them update the file. The crow that knows your face has been watching longer than you've been watching back. That was true this morning. It has been true on every morning you walked past the window, without stopping to look. The question is not whether the crow in your yard has made a decision about you. It has. The question is, what's in the file? Drop yours below, what you noticed, what you tried. I read everyone. Take care of the birds out there, and I'll talk to you in the next one.